it's never articulated. So in other words, we all have inner monologue in some way, and it's how clear that is, I guess, or how expressed it is. And in some people, it's literally out there. So yeah, my inner monologue is also audible to outsiders if they're close enough. So yeah.
Yeah, mine's not as clever as that. Mine's the opposite. So mine sits on my shoulder and tells me to do things that I shouldn't do.
So it's kind of a pressure type person.
It's a gremlin. It's like a
yeah.
Yeah.
That would horrify me. That I would find that psychologically difficult to understand. There's something in there, like a monstrous influence forcing you to do things.
Stop running and going to the bakery. Stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Folks, we're talking inner monologue. Do you have an inner monologue? And if so, is that a friendly voice or not? Is the person you're speaking to giving you advice, giving you an internal pep talk? Is this something that do you enjoy speaking to that person? Is it actually a friendly voice, or is it someone who's giving you pressure, telling you no, telling you you're not good enough, whatever it is? It probably is quite important to figure that out, because I wonder how much of our mental challenges are can be thought of in terms of whether you've got the friendly voice or a negative voice. So
the reason we started talking about this is because every time I enter the green room before Brainfood, Hung is talking, and there's nobody else there, and he's talking to himself, and he's addressing himself in the third person.
Got no friends. Got to fill the airwaves with my own voice and be my own audience. But as I was saying to you, Adam, I have done this since I was a small child, and I do recall people taking the piss out of me at school when they saw me walk to school and think, "Oh, who are you talking to?" So I fucking talking to myself. That's just what I do.
Talking to yourself like that is not quite what some people do, though, which is called Iliism. And Iliism is referring to yourself in the third person as if you're some sort of special. Pele is going to score 3 goals today.
Yeah. I think that's very performative. So the inner voice or the talking to myself that I don't do unless I am by myself. Do you know what I mean? It's like a solo activity. But yeah, there's some people that like to address themselves in that way. They're usually like celebs, though, aren't they? They've probably got to a point where they're almost playing up a character to a large degree. So I wonder whether that's an evolved state more than anything else. But yeah. Anyway, we're on to Brainfood Live on Air. It's episode 169, bringing it to you every Friday. Super excited to be chatting with you today, because guess what? It's a very, very important topic, and it's a topic that Brainfood has really been intimate in over the time that we've been involved in it. Because basically, what is recruiting Brainfood if it isn't about content and getting it out there to recruiters and what have you? Today, we are going to be talking about how do you actually create a content engine. So in other words, not just the single inspirational post, the once a year inspirational post that you make. No, we're talking about your ability to create a system that consistently gets material out there in such a way that it grows your audience. How do you do that? And we've got a bunch of really interesting guests to come and help us do that today. So it's going to be a very exciting show indeed. Anyway, before we kick off, let's do some sound checks as usual. I think everyone can hear me on Crowdcast, but just drop me a note in the chat stream to let me know audio and video is okay. You can see me and Adam okay here. We should be live streaming this on the Facebook page. So folks, if you can see me on the Facebook page, let me know. If so, this is actually the second time we've piped it in there. And it's still a little bit of a concern whether people can see me or not. If you can hear me or see me on the page, give me a comment. Let me know on Recruiting Brainfood LinkedIn page where you can see me okay, and that's all good. And we're out on Facebook and on Twitter as well. I think we're all a couple of thumbs up here, which is great. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Paulette and Claire. All good. Okay, a quick word to our sponsors. Every show is sponsored, folks. We couldn't run Brainfood Live on air without the support of our sponsors. So please take a moment and check them out when you have a chance. I also try and align the topic with what the sponsor does as well. And today's sponsor is a very cool company called Adway, Adway.ai. As far as I know, they're the only algorithmic, programmatic, should I say, social advertising platform that's focused on recruitment. So in other words, if you wanted to get your jobs, your content, delivered it towards people that are on social platforms, and you want to have a very clear audiences you want you to direct that content to, Adway might be the business you want to check out to help you do that. So if you have any kind of marketing budget at all, or recruitment advertising budget of any sense, do check out adway.ai. I will share the chat stream, sort of their link on the chat stream. I want to be seeing Adway, by the way, in a couple of weeks, because they've invited me kindly to Gothenburg. So I'll be in Gothenburg having a chat with them. It's going to be exciting to go there. Okay, let's say hello to Adam. Adam Gordon wearing a jumper. That's disappointing. You know, it was like in the sea about 8 days ago, and now it's like, oh, good. It's a bit grey. I have to stick the jumper on.
Well, the 26th of August. So, you know, most people would think that's midsummer, but of course in Scotland, the school holidays are about 6 weeks earlier than they are in England. And funnily enough, summer corresponds with that as well. Summer actually starts in Scotland on the 1st of May and ends on the 1st of June. So, yeah, it's 15 degrees.
Yep, getting a bit chilly. And I tell you what, with the obviously everyone is talking about our insane energy sort of prices that are going up. That's going to be a serious problem for so many people. I'm actually looking at my expenditure. I'm currently paying like very little. I'm paying something like 62 pounds a month for my electricity bill. Because I don't spend a lot of electricity, and I live in a 1-bed flat. But I expect that to go into at least a couple hundred come October. And for people in bigger homes, big family homes, and what have you, it's going to be a tough one. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting and I think a really difficult end of the year, I'm afraid to say, for a lot of folks in Europe, but particularly UK, which I think has the highest energy price increases anywhere. It's going to be crazy. So there we go. So I understand the jumper. Anyway, Adam, we have a change of scene, because usually we review the newsletter, but folks, we have extracted the newsletter review and are now doing that on a new show on Mondays called Brainfood Baked Fresh. So we did that last Monday. We had really good fun. We're going to do it for an hour from 12 to 1 every Monday. And we're going to talk about the newsletter as a separate thing from Brainfood Live, because I want to get our guests on earlier and have them basically give sort of the audience a bit more access to the guests and not have those two things compete. So do follow the channel if you're interested in newsletter review. Do that every Monday, although we won't do it this Monday because we've got a bank holiday, in which case it's the Monday following. So anyway, let's say hello to Adam. Adam Gordon, good to see you. We usually say what was interesting in newsletter, but forget about that. Let's talk about recruitment and content marketing, because this is actually something you know something about. So give us a one-liner about your background in this area and why you think it's possible to create a recruitment marketing content engine.
Well, first thing is, this is weird because it's the first time in probably, we've done 169 shows.
169.
I've probably done about 110 of them, I would think. And this will be the first one that I've never had to prepare for, which is great. So I've been in recruitment. I've been in recruitment since 99, and I've been in recruitment marketing since 2002. And my perspective is most people are not, even though like a lot more people than normal are in the market looking for opportunities, but most people are not in the market looking for opportunities. They don't care about your job adverts. They don't care about your employer branding. You've got to work out more intelligent ways of getting their attention. And that does not involve sending them call to action, which is about apply for a job. It involves building relationships with them in different ways. And the more in demand the people that you need to try and bring into your organization, the harder you've got to work. That could be volume, could be because you need so many, and everybody's competing for them, or it could also be because they've got skills that are like rare. So it's a mega topic, this.
I think you've said something that's really important. The most recruiter content that you see has a call to action in it, and that may be the first thing to think about if you're creating some sort of recruitment marketing content strategy, is that we're overly obsessed with the ask. So if you imagine sending a job ad, classically, we're basically asking people to apply to it, right? So 90% of all recruiter activity on LinkedIn, for instance, I guarantee you is, I'm hiring for, do you know anybody who does this? And it's like, I want you to simply apply to this job. And that actually is ineffective marketing, because how many people actually respond to that in this way? In other words, treatment of content as if they were only adverts, maybe the first thing we need to try and think about and avoid if we're going to be successful in building that type of engine. So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Well, the problem is, for me, the problem is that almost all recruitment marketing is what I describe as point of sale material. So it's for the people that have already made a decision that they're interested in making a job move, and they've already decided they might be interested in applying to your organization. So it is job adverts, it's career site, it's all that bottom of the funnel stuff for people that are there or thereabouts. But most people are not there. They're somewhere further up the funnel. However, I do believe that every single thing you do in terms of recruitment marketing should have a call to action, but not being apply for a job, but keep clicking. You want people to keep clicking. So there should never be a cul-de-sac piece of marketing. There should always be a next best action.
Yeah, actually, right. And Wim said the same. Call to action is there. It's the type of call to action. So I was having a very kind of narrow view. Call to action meaning apply for the job, which, when you think about it, is actually quite a big commit. Because this person has just been interrupted.
Let's get married.
Yeah, it's like interrupting a day, apply for the job. No, it's like they're not thinking that way. But some sort of thing to get them to keep doing, follow a page, subscribe to something, or just to interact with it even is often the best thing, particularly if you're positioning that content in a place where interaction is rewarded. Then it makes sense just to get some engagement. And forget about having them, sign up to something, just to get them to engage in some way. And that's going to help sort of trigger some sort of, it's going to help your content potentially viralize a little bit. It's part of the reason why I'm very keen to get Joe Lalgee on, because he's actually been amazing at this on LinkedIn. And he's got some ridiculous numbers of followers. As an operational recruiter, I think he's got more followers than anybody. So I'd be interested to know what his technique is. But let's bring them all on. We've got Claire Bush as well. We've got Christina Robinson. Everyone's coming from different angles on this, so this is going to be really, really interesting to get our guests on. Let's do that straight away. So Claire, where are you? I think Claire is Claire. Yep, there we go. I need to insist on full names at some point, especially if you call Simon or something, at some point, we're going to get the wrong person on. They're going to just say hello. It'll be like that BBC interview where they interviewed a fella for a job and accidentally put him on TV. Do you remember that? He was going for some janitor's job or something at the Beeb, and he somehow wandered into the wrong place, and they actually got him on air, interviewing him for some sort of like international news thing, thinking he was a different person. So I think I'm waiting for that to happen on Brainfood at some point. Anyway, we've got everyone in the house. Let's do some quick introductions. Claire Bush, why don't you go first? Who are you? What it is you do?
I'm VP of marketing for Adway. So I've been here a good couple of months. 20 odd years in and around the industry, recruitment and marketing for definitely 20 of those. And yeah, lots of really great conversations had with lots of these lovely people on screen with me. And marketing and recruitment is my passion. So yeah, lovely to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great to have you on the show as ever. Christina, great to see you. Why don't we go you? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, so I'm MD here at Green Umbrella Marketing. So we work with independent recruitment agencies. We help them stand out outline. So lots of stuff from a social media angle, from my perspective.
Cool. And Brainfood has actually accessed Green Umbrella's services before, and it was absolutely fantastic in terms of production of show content and stuff like this. So absolutely something we might need to revisit. Okay, and we have Joel Lalgee as well. Joel, good to see you, sir. Can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Name's Joel. Obviously, I work at Hirewell. We're a basically like a recruitment firm / kind of, I guess, tech recruitment company now. with some recent acquisitions, but I lead our business development. And as many of you, as you referenced before, really passionate about content on LinkedIn, Twitter, and just using content as a way to develop relationships.
Let's start with your content, Joel, because you are a man that actually has more followers on LinkedIn than I do, and I was like demoralized. I thought, how is this even possible? But you do. So how many followers do you have, and what's your explanation as to how you got those?
Yeah, so I think right now it's at about 143,000, maybe just under that. But yeah, it's. I think what happened was someone explained it to me. Actually, I create pretty friendly content for recruiters. So a lot of how the content started to go viral was, just looking at situations that recruiters go through, that we all go through, no matter how expert you think you are. We all go through certain experiences with hiring managers or just changes that happen on a search, for example. So kind of took the Adam Karpiak style of looking at how can we create, find humor in situations. So obviously he's a lot more focused on like job seekers. I thought, well, someone needs a voice for recruiters with this. There's so many things that happen that we can all relate to. And my idea behind that was I'm trying to reach owners of recruitment firms. The content I was producing at the time just didn't seem to reach them. It was valuable content, but it just didn't seem to get in front of the people I wanted it to. And so I thought if I can get recruiters to share my content, then I can start to get in front of the people I need to get in front of. And so first thing I thought was I've got to make relatable content. And then I thought, what is relatable about recruitment? Everybody has a sense of humor. Like you have to have a sense of humor almost to be in the industry. And so just started thinking of situations that I've gone through a million times that are super frustrating that we can all relate to. And then that was kind of the foundation that started these posts going viral and getting shared a lot. And then once I think you mentioned like the way the algorithms work is like once you start to get traction, then you can start to kind of build other content into your content machine. And that those posts will also do really, really well. So it's kind of evolved throughout time, but that was the thinking of it initially, and probably took about 2.5 years to get to that point. So it wasn't something that just happened like right away. It was a lot of testing, a lot of figuring out what actually works.
Joel, can I just ask you?
Go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah, so I just want to ask the components of your accent.
Yeah, so I'm actually originally from Blackpool in England, live in Wisconsin now in the US, and then lived in like Southern California as well. So
I thought there was something British in that. I thought there was something somewhere English. I couldn't have picked out Blackpool though, but okay.
It might just be because I'm talking with lots of people from England. Maybe it's just you guys are bringing it out from me.
Bringing the Blackpool out of the guy. Oh my goodness. That's possibly Liverpool, not a good thing. Here. Oh, there we go. There we go. All right, so this is actually really interesting to start off with, because I think that to get to that number of followers, and obviously it's not just about numbers, but I do think quantity makes a difference on platforms like this because it gives you wider reach. I think it's remarkable to have got there as someone who doesn't do this full time, because you still at that time, I think, did a recruiting job, or, you're doing BD type work. So you're not a full-time writer, but then you've got to this big audience. I think that's actually one of the biggest challenges a lot of the audience might have today when they're saying, you know what, I got so much to say. I've got the blog post, it's in draft. But they feel they don't have the time because you know what recruitment's like. There's interrupts, there's stuff happening. There's always another thing you have to do. And then, it's the end of the day and it's tomorrow and it never gets done. How did you kind of defeat that scenario, Joel? Did you have that in your kind of feeling where you were pressured to do other things other than content, but you somehow, how did you get to the point where stuff it, I'm going to do the content?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think like 3 years ago, I think I was just so sick of just the cold outreach because everybody's doing it. And I started noticing people talking about content and like, okay, if you use content, then people can know who you are. You can start to develop inbound. And I just became fascinated with that. And there was no training. There was nothing at the agency I was at that was really encouraging me to do that. So I just think it's like so many other things in life. Like you just have to start doing it. Like, and you have to figure out what aspect of content you're good at. Like video for me is not my strong suit. So I've really doubled down on copy. So I look at the platforms that really, copy works on, which would be Twitter and LinkedIn. And luckily you can kind of blend the two together. But if I was really good on video, or I felt like, I have a really good video presence, then I'd probably look more at Instagram and TikTok. But there's no way of getting around it. There's no shortcut. Like, you just have to start doing it. And then the advantage is the more content you have, then you can start to repurpose, and that saves time. So really, like, once you've built a machine, it really just starts to just run for you automatically. And so initially there's a time, there is a time you've got to obviously allocate time to it. But then the longer you do it, the easier it gets, which saves time. And then you can also start to repurpose. You can start to bring in old content that's done well in the past, and that saves time. So it's like anything. Initially, you're going to have to put the work into it, but then you just start getting compounding returns on it.
Yeah, so many good things to say there, Joel. Thank you very much for your insight. Folks, if you're watching this and you're taking an hour out of your busy recruiting day, does it resonate with you in the sense that you may feel you have a voice, you want to say things, but you're just too busy during the day to ever get it out there? Let me know in the comments if you feel that's your situation and whether this conversation or these insights might help. Christina, go to you, because you're actually servicing this need, aren't you? You're supplying the service to recruiters because they have the problem. They don't actually have the capacity, or maybe the bosses don't want them to have individuals to go ahead and do that. What's the sort of conversations typically occur when you first encounter a customer? Like, why do they go to you, and what do they want?
So it always comes down to three things. So time, as you've mentioned. But then it's enthusiasm. Okay, sometimes it's like, we know we need to be doing this, but we just don't want to. So that's quite often an issue. And especially if I'm dealing with the leaders in the business. So if they're not enthusiastic, then they're trying to ask me, how do we get the recruiters in the business on board as well? It's like, well, it's got to come from the top, right? So there's that bit. But also there's a bit of an issue around, and I always describe it as courage. Okay, because everyone has an opinion and we all want to give our opinions, but we don't always want to be the first person to give our opinion. And, that's probably one of the things that Joel's doing really well, is the fact that he's starting the conversations, he's putting something out there, and it like opens the floodgates, then people can engage in that. And I think that's, like I say, it really comes down to those three things: time, enthusiasm, and courage. They're the problems we're solving.
That's really interesting. Time, enthusiasm, and courage, folks. It didn't occur to me that there were some managers that were not interested, and of course that's true. There's a lot of recruitment agency owners that would perceive that all of this is just gameplay, or it's stuff that it's distracting from the real work of making money, etc. Because the returns are a little bit further down the road, and they're ambiguous. Like, they're hard to map exactly back to this. Right, you could, even if you had a viral post somewhere, and suddenly down the road you've got a call-in client, or you've got some more candidates saying yes to you where they usually said no. It's hard to directly attribute that to something you said earlier. It's like, probably, but you don't really know, right?
And it ties in with what Adam was saying before you sort of brought us on screen. It's that top of funnel stuff is really hard to measure, but it's like, if you don't get that bit right, you're not getting any results anywhere.
All right, let's talk about the measurement then. Adam and Claire, because you both have worked both in the tech side and also sort of trying to do a lot of this KPI work. How do you set about justifying the case? So let's say there is a company out there, or a TA team internally, or there's an agency that wants to really change the way in which they're interacting with audience rather than just the outreach, as you said, Joel. I think we all agree that cold outreach, even though you have to do it, over time is trending down in terms of effectiveness, right? Year on year. How many, where it might have taken you like 10 dials to get through last year, it's going to take you 12 next year, and then maybe 20 the next year after that. At some point, it's going to stop working. So, I think the incentive is there, but how do we build a business case for a recruitment agency or an in-house team to say, yeah, this is going to work? Any thoughts, Claire or Adam, on this?
I suppose I'm going to come at it from a holistic marketing perspective, first of all. It's like my kind of seat, if you like, is always around the initial brand communication. But then so much of what we're doing, I think even now in most organizations, marketing function and the brand messaging really does wash through, and if not, gets rinsed and properly redesigned again by the employer brand. So I've just been reading some of the questions in the chat. To really get told you can't like and comment and share and engage with commentary out there in this world that we're living in is just bonkers for me. I would definitely say I'm not on the side of the social commentary police, and I think that you should carry on having those conversations internally and find another job if you're really unhappy not being able to express yourself. But then I suppose going back to your question, Hung, for me it's about holistically the way in which the business is actually wanting to engage. The purpose of engagement through copy, content, video, any media is to move the business forward, right? So it's about exposure, it's about getting results. It's either getting more people in through the door to be employees, or it's about selling product, services. So if you've got that as the mindset and the end goal, then you're going to use everything in your toolkit to really get that engagement going. Content is an obvious thing because it's really readily available. You just need to, like Joel say, do it, and then it's there. And then you can iterate as you go. It's something that's really easily kind of curated. You can have purposeful project management. You can have spot stuff. You can have consistent spray and pray kind of mentality around it. But you can just keep this thing going or turn it off and on as you need to and as your budgets require, depending on where your situation is. But I think for me, it always goes back to that beginning. Like, what is the objective? What is the point? What are you trying to do? And then, yeah, it becomes part of the toolkit to get there.
I think it's great that both you and Joel mentioned the same thing, is that the first step is actually the most important thing. I can see it's like almost starting a car or taking the first step in sort of stepping forward, like the momentum carries you further forward. For some reason, I'm thinking of like a super cavitating torpedo. I don't know whether anybody knows about this, but super cavitation is this like phenomena in in liquid, where basically if a torpedo moves fast enough, it creates an air bubble around it, and then it accelerates even further because the friction's gone down because it's created an air bubble. Right. So I think maybe content is like a super cavitating torpedo, maybe. I don't know. What do you think? Right. Go to you, Adam. Talk to us about how do you construct like something more systematic. So we're talking about a situation where we want to get started. That's great. But is there like a technique to make sure that it keeps on going? Because I wonder whether there's a lot of folks there that have stopped and started their blog. You know, how many blogs are just one blog, right? Great. They got the first one out and then it was so exhausting because they put so much energy and effort into it. It's like, couldn't do the second one, and then never do the second one. Same with podcasts, same with live stream, same with whatever people do. It's so much effort to do the first one. They fail on the second, and that's actually the biggest failure. So how do you avoid that?
I'm gonna bridge just what Claire was just saying with the answer to the question that you just asked, by saying, if you ask any like recruiter or recruitment leader, is your cold in-mail performance getting better over time? They're probably not going to say it is. They're probably going to say it's not. I hear that all the time from companies that used to send out 100 in-mails and they'd get 80% response rate, 20% positive response rate. And today they're not getting 80% responses, and they're certainly not getting 20% positive responses. So that's a cold contacting people is getting worse. The results from cold contacting people is definitely getting worse. So you have to build up the relationship. To answer the question around, where do you get started? So yeah, you definitely have to think about what is going to be sustainable. Nobody who is recruiting is going to have enough time to come up with original content like every day. They're just not going to be, unless they are, I don't know, the 1 in 50 people who can just sit and type, or who can just get their phone and talk and then post it, right? Not many people can do those things and come up with original things. So you need to think about, how am I going to have sources of information coming into me that I can just add a sentence to and share it on LinkedIn or on Twitter or whatever? If you work for a large organization, your company has got investor relations teams producing content every week. It's got B2B content and thought leadership teams that are producing things like at least every month. You've got internal training and development happening with content there that you can, without giving away the secret sauce of your organization's culture and performance, you can share things from that. You can share things that are from your industry publications. You can share, if you're a third-party recruiter working for an agency and you're working in, let's say, the life sciences industry, subscribe to all the life sciences, publications and newsletters and vlogs and things like that, and reshare those things to become part of that community. So that's the first place to start is, how am I going to be able to get the optimal content out there without sucking up masses of my time? By being a curator. There's a few good examples of curators around here, Sam.
That actually was the first, I hate to kind of volunteer myself as an example, but it was actually correct in the sense I did not have the time to write original content at the time because I wasn't doing Brainfood full time. I was still running Workshape at the time. And I had a couple of hours a week. And so the reason why the Sunday newsletter is a curated newsletter is because I needed to pick stuff out and be able to assemble it quickly. And yes, I could commentate on those things, and maybe that's useful also, get it out there. And that was the thing. So cost per production is probably something we need to think about. So people who are doing this, you need to think, how expensive in terms of time is it to produce that piece of content that you're thinking about? That needs to be thought about, because if you don't, you're going to end up being the one hit wonder, which is a huge expensive waste of energy, because you need to actually have a consistent way of doing it before you start getting a following and start building a sort of momentum behind it.
But what you're doing in bringing all of this together, what you're doing is you're saving every subscriber huge amounts of time on going and trying and finding all this rich source of information that the time they don't have, and otherwise they wouldn't go and do it. So you are literally making people smarter by, giving like a 20-minute read as opposed to hours and hours of going and trying to find things. By, as a recruiter, just like once a day, sharing the most interesting hot topic in my industry or for the people, the audience that I'm talking to, I'm doing the same thing, but I'm generating goodwill from that community of individuals. So it's about generating goodwill. That's what you want to try and achieve from this. That's the reward to begin with. So
to begin with, that's the ROI. So the ROI might be not, we've got X amount of people signing up to this newsletter, or we've got more deals, etc. If you set those types of targets, you will definitely fail. Early on, your ROI needs to be, can I generate goodwill and get people saying, yeah, that's great. And if you get a few of those, that's going to give you a morale boost. It's going to encourage you to do more. And maybe at the beginning, your objective needs to be just simply to systematize your content production. So I see it very much like going to the gym. Who here goes to the gym, or at least attempts to do so, right? The first thing you got to do is not to have these ridiculous targets about your body composition or your 100 meters time or whatever. No, the first thing you got to do is just discipline yourself to go 3 times a week. That you systematize it. Just keep doing that, and then the gains will come. So perhaps we should think about content production from a cold start as similar to this, whereby you just got to get it into automatization. So you're constantly doing it, and you're not going, days and weeks without even thinking about it. It stops becoming a task. Very, very interesting. Go ahead, Claire.
Sorry, I was just going to ask Joel in terms of that exact question. So from a starting point and your cadence now in terms of your writing and the time that you commit to content, where does it start? Where did it start from for you? Was it half an hour a day? Was it first thing in the morning? How did you kind of get into your rhythm?
Yeah, it was I think about half an hour a day, and it started with look, when I started creating content, I was just in a recruiting seat, and so I literally just started thinking about things that I was doing that I was successful with. So creative subject lines. I remember doing a video on that. It's pretty basic. But I think that's another hurdle that you have to overcome in your mind, is you're not trying to come up with something that isn't you, because ultimately, if somebody did reach out to you, and then you're not the person who's created the content, it then doesn't work anyway. So I think even like junior recruiters, for example, they have value to bring because they can just, you can just talk about a difficult situation or a challenge that you're facing. And that's really where you start from. I think, one thing that we do at our agency that has helped tremendously is we meet once a week. We have a content meeting, and it's voluntary. It's not forced. And one of the partners at our company is involved in this. And, someone mentioned it before, like you have to have the leadership bought into it. And leadership is bought into it at our company. I'm obviously bought into it. And we've just seen like that content group each week has grown and grown and grown. So we're like getting together and going, well, what are the topics that we're all facing with clients? Like yesterday we had a topic where people were showing up to interviews, and then on the first day it was someone else showing up on the first day because everything's virtual. That's such a crazy topic to talk about. But now we've got like 4 or 5 people adding in their thoughts to it. So we're all working together with the same goal. And when I was coaching recruitment teams on this, that was the biggest challenge. Like, this isn't something that companies should be approaching like by themselves individually. Get together. And, we've got a chat where we'll drop our, content and we'll all kind of work together with it. And I think that is a key, but someone else said it's like leadership's got to be bought into it. You've got to understand that like content isn't a thing that you do that's just, I believe, is just optional. It's like, it's got to be a part of your routine. And when you start thinking about it, if I post a piece of content, it might take me 5 minutes to produce or half an hour to produce at most, but then it's working all day. And then I'm going around and doing other things and coming back to it. I don't know another piece of business development that works like that. It's like a robocaller. You have those tools as well out there where it will just connect you. It's the same idea. It's like, it's just very small amount of work initially, and then it just keeps working for you. It's like a 24/7 wrap. And I think that's the approach you got to have. It really does. And then the more you produce, the easier it is. Sorry for that.
No, that's a really good concept, folks. Basically, think if you're still juggling about whether it's worth your time or not, have a think about this thing existing independent of you and doing work for you whilst you get on with the rest of your day. Because people are watching this. You could go and do some shopping or whatever, come back, and 20 people might have engaged in that post already. So all of It totally happens. This is what YouTubers all totally understand, right? So this is super interesting. Joel, you mentioned something here which I think it's worth like really exposing to the audience. But you mentioned that the content ideas that you've generated have emerged from your own observations as to your operating behavior. So in other words, you're doing your job. You're simply observing how you've done your job in a certain way and said, hey, this is how I've done it. And then that's the content idea. So I think a lot of people struggle right at the beginning because they're trying to imagine some genius piece of thing. They're trying to, solve all of the problems, they're trying to solve the DE&I issue, all this type of stuff. No, it's just too big to do that. Think about the things that you're doing on a day-to-day basis that might have worked, might not have worked. I think something that might not have worked could also be good content because it's an example of how not to, as well as a how to, and just simply expose that and talk about it in such a way that you can describe how that sort of your work has been, and people might just get a bit of insight and understand the psychology and the actions. And as you say, the audience that you're trying to address might resonate very, very much with what it is that you're showing them. People like to know that there's other people out there. So basically open up your operation activity. That's the content engine right there.
100%. And I think too, like you mentioned it before, like I think what happens is we get like really fixated on that first piece of content. My first piece of content got like 3 likes and then just sat there. It really wasn't until about 3 to 4 months in of consistent content creation that I started getting traction. But you should take peace of mind of that, because it's not like the first piece of content you're going to post is going to go viral. It's probably going to be terrible. It's not going to be good. There's a big difference between where I started and where I'm at. But it's like we get fixated on that one piece, then it doesn't happen. Like going to the gym, you don't get a 6-pack in the first session. But if you have that mentality, like something's going to happen, it becomes very hard to continue and be consistent. Whereas if you're like, hey, I'm just going to start sharing things, whatever that is, just showing up, it takes the pressure off. And you're just talking about your day. You're not, it's like you just are talking about problems that you're going through, solutions. Might even get personal. I know, like, personal content, I go either way on it. I think everyone has levels of that. But if you're going to talk to somebody on the phone and say, how was your day? And they ask you what you did on the weekend, or you have a conversation, you can share things like that to a point. But again, it's not like you're creating something that isn't like, you're not creating some like original concept that's not from you. You're just sharing yourself. I mean, it's kind of the core of what social media is.
It's a compound effect though as well, right? There's a compound effect in this. So you start off, one person clicks like on your post and you're like a bit deflated on that. The next time you get 2. The next time it's 14. The next time it's 75. With every, 5% more than what I got last time starts to build up to be something really quite big.
100%. Unless you go on TikTok and then you just go randomly viral, which I think, can happen. And I think that's the beauty of social media nowadays, is like things can randomly go viral, or you can just something could randomly happen that's not planned, but you can't plan that. So it's like, just don't like assume that that's going to happen, or it needs to even happen. I mean, it really doesn't.
But you can be relentless. What I like about what you've said, Joel, is the I think Christina mentioned what the cadence was, but also the consistency. So cadence is the number of times you do things within a time frame, but just the consistency. Like, this guy's never going to go away, right? And to a large degree, that's how Brainfood works. It's like, listen, it's happening every week. It's not going to go away. It doesn't matter. If you don't like it today, you might like it next week. If you don't like it next week, you're going to like it next month at some point, right? So it never goes away. And that relentlessness, I think, creates trust in a strange way. Something that's always just relentlessly there creates some sort of trust, and at some point someone's going to click on that and think, yeah, I'll pay attention to this, and then suddenly that's where it starts happening. So this feeds into the kind of understanding the cost of production. So you have to think, producing one item is going to cost you this amount, but then think about how many times you need to create that over time. That's the commitment you need to have put in before you can think about results. That's the sort of the time frame that you need to kind of juggle. Christina, going back to you though, because this is worth talking about, because I'm sure your customers don't give you like 6 months to deliver results, right? You've got a different set of pressures.
Wish.
Right. So we know it as native producers of content, let's say, but a lot of the customers that go to you probably don't do this. Maybe they're even not into it in the same way. So they want results right here and now, like boom, 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 artificially compressed sort of timeframes to judge this. How are you able to deliver those results? Or how are you able to manage those expectations so that, they can't think along those lines?
To be honest, it's a lot of coaching. It really is a lot of coaching, a lot of managing expectations, and also a lot of working on, okay, you're making this investment, how do we maximize it? So, if you think about the cost of producing that one piece of content, so maybe it is, a long form piece of, it's a blog that we've written. Actually, how many different ways can we use that now over what period of time? Because the more we're getting out of it, the more valuable it is for the audience, but the more valuable it is to us as an asset. And I think from a content perspective, we really have to take an asset approach. Everything that you post is something, maybe it's a couple of paragraphs, but you get all this engagement on there. Okay, let's put the additional work in to produce a 1,000-word blog. Maybe that's something that's then brought forwards that you are talking about on your podcast or whatever else. So it's about understanding each bit of content, how are we actually going to use it? And, to bring it back to the question, there's a lot of education with our clients as to how to do that. In doing that, we're giving people the same message multiple times, multiple different ways. That's how we start to get the results quicker.
So there's two things here, which I think are kind of a Venn diagram. But firstly, you're talking about, and Joel mentioned this as well, about one piece of content, almost like creating an excuse for another piece of content to then bud off that in some way. So for example, you post something on LinkedIn, you get a load of engagement on there. Guess what? Maybe a screenshot of some of the cool engagement comments itself could become a thing that you then publish as a second piece of content, because that's also interesting. And then the other part you talked about was kind of repurposing that content. So let's say we're Brainfood Live as a podcast, by the way, is a version of repurposing the Brainfood Live thing. So for folks who don't know, the Recruiting Brainfood podcast, which now is like 150,000 downloads, that's just the audio file from this show. So it's a way of like just getting another channel, getting another bunch of people into it, but not extra work. It takes about an hour per show to produce that audio file, that podcast. So you can do the same thing with any kind of content you produce, be it written, video, audio, whatever it might be. And, you know, basically create one. And then from that, you have multiple options. I'm reminded of food somehow, you know, where, you know, you've cooked a big turkey or something, and you don't just eat turkey, you know. You got like soup to make out of that. You got sandwiches, that you got all kinds of things that come off the back of that. Adam, you about to say something?
No, I'm just agreeing with you.
No,
I did want to pick up on something that Joel said actually that I think is really important, that I just think is worth opening up a little bit more. When it comes to creating content, there's two questions that I ask to kind of create a bit of inspiration. So first of all, what's the most boring thing that happens in your business? Because quite often that's the most interesting thing to the outside world. And that will start all sorts of conversations from there. So that's one thing. But the other thing is actually listening, you know, and it's not about, it is kind of about creating that habit. Okay, every time you're on a call with a candidate, you've got your notes there. It's one additional note. What's the biggest problem this person has right now? Okay, and it might be they've shared the biggest problem with you in the first 30 seconds of that call. When you're doing the rapport building part of the call, it's actually there. That's where the golden nuggets are. When you start to recognize, okay, well, actually, here's the trend at the minute. You know, this is how, you know, I don't know, 3 ways app developers are reducing their electricity bill at home. Okay, now we're getting attention from actually like, this is like their biggest problem isn't whether or not they should look at a new job. Their biggest problem is the increase in electricity bill. Mm-hmm. And it is like, just listen.
There's 2 really interesting points you've made there, Christina. I think they're worth just sitting on a little bit there for the time being. Firstly, I love the idea of analyzing your own operations in terms of your personal interest lens, right? Because the things that you find thrilling may not be particularly effective as a content idea, but the things that you find boring, actually, people might not know about this. You know, there's lots of stuff that we do in recruitment that people you can just see online that they're ignorant of how recruitment works. As a candidate, I was a candidate first time before I joined any kind of recruitment business. I had no clue how recruitment worked at all in terms of agents, clients, whatever, no clue whatsoever. And I think I was not unusual in that case. But have a think about some of the stuff you do that is super, super routine, and just write something about that or say something about it. And that might explain something to an audience. And suddenly you become curious about it. I'm reminded of some of the TikToks that are out there that have ridiculous audiences, and they do something just so like ridiculously simple. I follow a guy on TikTok called the Pool Guy. I don't know whether you know this fellow. He literally just cleans swimming pools. Like that's all he does. And his entire page is him saying, yeah, I got another pool. I'm going to drain the pool. I'm going to clean the pool. I'm going to fill the pool. And that's it. Right? That's 60 seconds. It's got like 14 million followers. It's like, how is that even possible? So like, don't underestimate how much people might be interested in your work. That is something that is a content plan and a content idea. Very, very good. Okay. You talked about listening, Christina. I want to actually expand that, because one of the techniques that I think I use to generate ideas for Brainfood Lives is to stimulate a conversation in order to listen, right? So you often see stuff I post on LinkedIn. I'm not necessarily trying to get views or clicks or whatever. What I'm trying to do is figure out whether people are interested in that topic and whether commentators are happening. If they're commentating and they say something interesting, guess what? That's potentially a future panelist I can bring in because, you know, they've said the interesting angle or whatnot. So the point is like, don't think you got to sit in a blank room and do all the work yourself. Like, creativity doesn't happen by sitting there and just like trying to be creative. It happens when you're engaging with other people and having them crash ideas into you. Do it as publicly as you can. I really get annoyed when people say, yeah, can I jump on a call and talk about this idea? I pull my hair out. I think, why, it should be a public conversation, right? It would be like so much faster. And actually that itself might be content, right? So your attempt to generate content ideas itself is content. Recruiters right now could write a post saying, titled, what the things that are stopping me from producing content as a title. I guarantee you that's going to get a bunch of views, right? So almost switching your mentality away from private, think about it, and then deploy a finished product, to open it out. There's no such thing as private public division. Just open out the thought process early on, and that itself is content. And then you can just write the next thing after that as well. So cool. I've ranted a bit there. Sorry, folks. Let's talk about some questions, because we've got people asking questions. Folks on Crowdcast, if you have any questions, please use the ask a question function. I'm going to go to the panel and talk about those. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, anywhere else, and you want to ask a question to the panelists, please ask it in the comment section or comments thread, and I'll get to them. I'm on the phone, I can see it. So let's go through to these questions. Let's go, Ellie. Does anyone know if the recording of this? No, Ellie, no recording. You have to be here live. Let's delete that. No, I'll be all right. Yes, it's recorded. Just press replay. Okay, Jane can't make it either. That's fine. Replay. Vim saying, okay, small steps. Instead of solving D&I one swoop, that's an awesome idea. How do we know there's enough content before we end up posting one-liners? So in other words, how do we avoid the pithy one-liner? How do we, I guess, pick the middle part between not trying to solve the entire problems of the world, but having enough value in the post? Is there a happy medium? Thoughts on this? Claire, do you want to give this a shot?
I do, but I'm just also doing two things at once, which obviously I'm not adept is.
No worries. That's totally fine.
Ask me the question again. I've got my full attention now.
All right. Don't worry. See, that's a bit of live content right there, folks. Very interesting. Right, Joel, do you want to give this a shot, man? I can see you on screen.
Yeah, I think one thing that we're not, one thing that I would challenge us to think about is like, even with a one-liner isn't bad if it's a piece of content, because it's what happens in the comments. So if you have a really good, like I could say, I debated posting this, but I could say, hey, why don't we quietly quit talking about quietly quitting? And that's a one-liner that's going to be controversial, but it's going to start a thread, and the thread is content as well. And I think Adam had mentioned it. It's like, go to other places that people are having conversations. Your comments, particularly on LinkedIn, I found this, the way the LinkedIn algorithm works is if you comment, your followers see that comment. And so they'll get involved in the conversation. And so then if you are looking at those comments as just as good a content, then a one-liner is actually powerful. Because if you get 300 comments, you have 300 conversations, and then you have 300 potential ideas for content in the future. So I think the idea is like, it's not just the piece of content, it's the comments, it's the conversation that comes from that. And that, I'm sure, Hung, you've experienced this a million times, where someone puts a really insightful comment and then it starts just a huge thread. And then you have your next piece of content from that. And it's just like, because that's what people want to talk about. And that's where I think, just engaging in other people's content, going on other platforms. I don't recruit technical folk, but if I did, I would be on the dark web without a doubt, just having conversations and just getting ideas for content. Because if you see a big thread, you can take that idea and you can use that in your own content, and it's gonna continue to start a conversation. So it's just thinking a little bit more granular about it.
All right, so actually there's step one. And Claire, I'm going to go to your essay that you've just written in chat there in a second. So as an example, what you could do is simply take a screenshot of the essay that Claire's written and tweet that out. And that's decent content, right? It's like she hasn't even done anything. Claire's done all the work. No, but Joel, very, very a good point. The comment thread itself is the content. And if you think about places like Reddit, we did a sourcing on Reddit show a couple of weeks ago. The entire website is about the comments. No one bothers with the content, clicking on the link. Everyone's straight into the comments and they want to talk about what other people are talking about. So if you start a one-liner, I think that's okay, so long as it's a conversation starter. So you might consider yourself, your role, start the conversation, see what happens, and then engage with the people. And the engagement and the content becomes the thing. Second point I want to get in before I forget, but if you're struggling to create original content, then comment on someone else's original content may be the best way to start. So in other words, if you're struggling to get your stuff out, great. Check out your LinkedIn feed, check out your Twitter feed, whatever it is, and just say something that is there, that's relevant. And then that could be your way to get more confident and get that muscle working, whatever that sort of system is. You get that activated and that can get you started. Very, very good. Okay, folks, we're coming to the end of the show. So let's leave the audience with a couple of takeaways. One thing that they could do. I'm sure everyone's inspired. Are you inspired, everyone? I'm sure they are. They go tweet away right now or whatnot. But by the way, Twitter is really useful because it is short form. So if you're struggling to write long posts, then Twitter is actually, it's impossible to write a long post there. So no one's going to criticize you for those one-liners. It's like literally what it's all about. So it's totally fine. Same with TikTok. Struggling with the YouTube, 30-second video on TikTok, 10-second video on TikTok. Doable. Right. Let's talk about advice that you can take away for this audience. One thing that let's say an operational recruiter, someone who's doing a job right now, but they want to do more inbound. How do they get there? Adam, yeah, let's go with you to begin with.
Something specific.
One thing they could do today that will help them get on their way.
Right. I want to just, I've posted in the chat. I want to just quickly say it. It's not quite how to get them on their way, but this is a really, really simple way of generating content. And this is every time you're talking to a hiring manager, ask them 3 or 4 open questions about why they like working there, what's the most exciting things happening in their company, in their team, what they're looking forward to over the coming months, stuff like that. Not why should people come and work for you? Not quite that, but just a little bit more further up funnel type questions, things that you can recycle and you can use over and over again. And if they'd want to be on camera, record them, do it on Zoom or whatever, and just get those videos with them. And if they don't want to be on camera, just write the notes, send it over to them on email and say, can I quote you on these things? This is what you said to me. And then post it. It doesn't take long. They give you the content. It's all about people in your organization. You make them famous and therefore your company famous. That's my piece of advice for a simple way of getting started.
Already really, really good. I mean, when you think about it, recruiters actually have almost no excuse, right? Because we're in conversation with people all the time. And if we're in a vertical, we're actually in deep conversation with people that know about that industry. So if you're able to ask consistently one question with every screening call, but it's in your back of your mind, it's for a content purpose, you might very quickly be able to get some really juicy insights that doesn't take a lot of work and effort. You could say, hey, listen, today's comment of the day from software engineer is this, or whatever it is. Yeah, that's like a decent tweet. That's something that's worth kind of thinking about, and it's almost cost-free. You're already doing the conversation with this person. So I actually fail to see.
It's not high time either. You're not having to come up with the ideas.
There's no cognitive effort. You just discipline yourself to ask that question. I love it. Go ahead, Claire. One thing that not the entire strategy as you've written in chat stream, like one thing they can do tomorrow, help them get on their way.
Take notes from conversations, as you just mentioned. But then I wrote one of my first things that I wrote down was a quote from Adam Gordon saying that recruitment marketing content should never end in a cul-de-sac, which, you can take that right now and stick that all over social because it's true. And Adam, obviously, is very wise and very knowledgeable. But I have a notebook everywhere I go, and every conversation, there is nuggets. Like you said, there's nuggets in every single conversation. And whether you're in that rhythm of reviewing content in the morning or in the evening, or you sit and read stuff over your lunch break, whatever it might be, there is content throughout your day that you will get exposed to, which you can repurpose and put out. And then the only thing I would add is in the food analogy kind of bank that we're talking about. Content for me is always like an onion. You can layer it and layer it and layer it, and it will continuously grow. If anybody has any kind of like big harvest festival kind of fairs that they go to, the biggest fruit and veg stuff, that's layers of growth, right? So that's all of that content about how to grow something is in that vegetable that you see that wins a prize. And that's exactly how content should be too.
That's it. So we've got to basically, hang on, let me just do this real quick. It's you know, the best writers actually have notebooks, don't they? Like pro authors and what have you, and comedians, because the stuff that they will come across in their day-to-day living, they'll hear something on the street or some observation will occur. Get it down, because that could be used in some way, even if it's a quick voice note. Everyone's like, maybe people don't carry notebooks, but you definitely always carry your phone everywhere, to the toilet, folks, don't you? Of course you do. So I guarantee you're never away from your phone. You can use a voice note. That's your recording device. Okay, Christina, go to you. One bit of advice you can give to the audience, get them started on a recruitment content engine.
Done is better than perfect. It's highly unlikely you're going to go viral. All those posts you've been writing and then hitting delete on, just start posting them.
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree more. Right now, if you have like a list of like drafts somewhere, get all of those drafts, take a snapshot of the title of the post, just get it out somewhere. Doesn't matter. That is a conversation starter, because it's moribund where it is. It's like you've got plants that you've decided not to show to the sun, and they're gonna die. So get them out into the sun, see what happens. Okay, Joe, final word to you, sir. Give us one piece of advice, thinking about your journey, operational recruiter, to becoming the most famous man on LinkedIn nearly. How have you been able to do that? One bit of advice for budding Joel Lalgee out there.
Yeah, I'm going to give, it's going to be one piece, but it's really 3 pieces. Number 1, don't overthink. Number 2, just put some time in your diary to do it every day, half an hour. And number 3, just comment on 10 pieces of content a day initially if you're really nervous about creating content. But I'd say number 1, just don't overthink it.
Yeah, it's a solid advice. Okay, folks, that's it. Thank you very much to our audience, to our panelists. It's been amazing to do this show. I think, again, we could even do a dedicated show for every segment of this. Like, how do you do content ideas? How do you amplify?
Stop repurposing your content. How do you repurposing?
Well, you know, I struggle with ideas, you know, so this is perfect. But no, we'll definitely do this again if people are interested. I think it's a really exciting show. And yeah, I think the more voices are out there telling people what they do, the better it is, you know. That's going to be great. Okay, let's say goodbye to our guest, Claire Bush. Thank you very much for your time. Great to see you. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And Christina Robinson, great to see you, my dear. Hopefully we'll get the chance to catch up soon. And Joe, good to meet you. I don't think we've had the chance to meet properly. No. So today was the first day. Great to see you, sir. And thank you so much for not only today, but also your contributions online. I think they're a real great example for recruiters to follow. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Good to meet you.
Cool. How was that?
Great. Loved it. Loads of great stuff from all of the guests. All coming at it from a slightly different angle, but agreeing with each other, I think, on every element of this, to be honest. So
we've definitely got to write this one up.
You know,
got to write this one up, because this is there's some juice there for this. There's some real value and insights that that I think will become obvious once you kind of grok it. But there's too many people out there that right now they don't grok it, and it's very frustrating for them. And I feel like we can solve that frustration real quick. So yeah, I'm gonna have to put some effort to put this together. I think this is really good. Yeah, and by the way, I think the extra time helps for sure, right?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not entirely sure I'm going to be able to contribute a vast amount to the ones about assessment.
Very seriously, mate.
This is my subject, so this is quite easy.
It depends on what you want to do, mate, because I don't want to drag you in to stuff that you're bored on and you're feeling that, because the co-host role probably is going to diminish somewhat, right? Because we're not doing the newsletter review in the same way, so you're definitely locked in on Monday, but now it's extra. to do this. So it's totally optional. I'll probably still invite you every time. But if you're saying you don't not interested, can't do it or whatever, just decline it.
Let's play it by ear.
Yeah. Cool. All right, mate. Well, listen, you have a good weekend. What are you doing this weekend? Anything interesting?
Playing rugby, taking my kid to rugby, playing football, taking him to football.
Lots of activity.
You?
I've got to do a lot of work. I've got like basically I'm traveling in the next couple of weeks in September. I've got this ridiculous trip planned. And that's basically traveling takes me out of sync. Because it's like I have to factor in all of the transition costs and the traveling costs and stuff like this in terms of time, and therefore I've got to basically bulk load the stuff in advance on that. So grinding through this weekend, I'm afraid to say, but
I will see you. We're going to see each other. iSIMS Inspire London, 22nd of September.
That's right. We're going to do an event together, aren't we? So it's I think I'm moderating a few panels and stuff like that. So yeah.
I have pretty much filled your panel.
Yep. Was I meant to do something?
No. You were not meant to do anything. Don't worry. That was I did it. So
right.
Cool. Good.
Nice to know. All right. Have a good weekend.
Catch you soon. Cheers. Bye.
See you later.